In one of New York's most exclusive neighborhoods, a black janitor, ignored by most, stumbles upon something miraculous. A way to speak with a mute child through drawings on a whiteboard. When the child's billionaire mother catches them together, it seems like a breach of rules. But what happens next will alter both women's lives forever. Ellie Wallace had learned to move like a ghost. That's what it took to survive as invisible labor in a world of polished glass and polite indifference. Every morning at 5:30, she passed through the service entrance of Crescent Academy, a school with its own helipad, gold-plated faucets in the executive restrooms, and a library that looked more like a palace atrium than a place for children. Her ID badge had stopped beeping a few weeks ago. No one noticed. The guards knew her face, the quiet rhythm of her footsteps, the way her cartwheels hummed on the tiled floors before the building fully woke. She moved through the conference wing first, wiping away streaks from the glass walls. One panel was still covered in the dry erase graffiti of yesterday's think tank. A spiderweb of words like optimization, vision pipeline, and impact-driven growth. Ellie scrubbed them away with methodical ease, replacing business jargon with silence. Her body ached, her fingers were cracked from winter, and her back still remembered the weight of lifting her daughter's wheelchair years ago. There was no wheelchair anymore. There was no daughter, not in that way. But the memory lingered like heat from a dying star. She made her way through the lower elementary corridor. The children weren't there yet, but their world buzzed from the walls. Bright posters, cubbies with names written in bubble letters, art projects hanging from the ceiling like strange, chaotic prayers. Ellie liked this hallway best. It still believed in color. No one greeted her. They never did. Teachers flowed past her like water around stone. Tight smiles, nods that didn't reach their eyes, sometimes nothing at all. But Ellie noticed everything. The exhausted math teacher who always dropped her keys. The music instructor who secretly smoked cloves behind the science lab. The second-grade girl who sat alone at lunch every day, her mouth opening like she wanted to speak, but never did. Ellie didn't belong here. She knew that. But sometimes, just sometimes, she let herself imagine she did. On a whim, she pulled out a pastel crayon someone had left on the windowsill. Pale orange, her favorite when she was younger. She turned over the back of the cleaning schedule clipped to her cart and, without thinking, drew a sun with a crooked smile. It wasn't perfect, but it made her smile. The first of the day. Then she heard footsteps. A child stood in the classroom doorway. Small, still. A girl, maybe 6 or 7, holding a broken chalk piece like a question. Her hair was pulled back in a neat braid and her uniform was spotless. Ellie recognized her instantly. Livia Beckett, daughter of Iris Beckett, CEO of Beckett Dynamics, rumored to be worth over $8 billion. The girl stared silently at the whiteboard. Ellie froze. "Contact with students is not permitted," echoed the voice of every HR manual she'd signed, but the girl didn't move, didn't run, didn't look afraid. Ellie crouched slowly, drawing a stick figure with braids. No words, just a shape, an invitation. The girl stepped forward, picked up the marker, drew a tree. Ellie added a sun. Livia drew a bird. Back and forth like that, in a language that didn't need sound. Ellie didn't know what made her do it again the next morning, or the one after that. But every day, Livia returned. Always silent, always drawing. She never smiled, but her lines grew bolder, her hands steadier. Ellie didn't ask questions. She only offered a world where the girl's silence wasn't a burden, but a form of art. One morning, Ellie heard the door open behind them. The air went cold. Iris Beckett stepped into the room like a blade of light. Her suit looked like it cost more than Ellie's annual rent. Her eyes scanned the scene. The janitor on her knees, a marker in hand, her daughter beside her. "And what do you think you're doing?" The voice was sharp, controlled, ice under pressure. Ellie stood slowly. "I was cleaning. She came in on her own." "You were drawing with her?" Ellie nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "You're a janitor." It wasn't a question. It was a dismissal. "Yes, ma'am." There was a silence then. Thick. The kind that hangs between two people who live in entirely different worlds. Iris turned to her daughter. "Livia, come." The girl didn't move. Iris's voice hardened. "Now." Reluctantly, the child followed. But she looked back once, her eyes wide with something fragile and almost broken. When they left, Ellie stood alone. The marker in her hand felt heavier now. Her stomach tightened. She knew what would come next. A reprimand. Maybe termination. She had crossed an invisible line. Not by harming, not by failing, but by being seen. The next morning, something had changed. The way the guards looked at her, the way the hall monitors whispered, a tightening around the corners of everything. And still, she came. Because some connections don't break. They echo. And some silences speak louder than words ever could. Ellie sat in the principal's office like a defendant at trial. The chair was too low, the air too still. Across from her sat Ms. Dreyfus, the principal of Crescent Academy, a woman who dressed in soft grays and spoke in hard lines. Beside her, in a darker suit and sharper posture, was a man who didn't work at the school. "I'm Mark Riley," he said, "Director of Internal Relations at Beckett Dynamics." Ellie nodded once, hands folded in her lap. "Do you know who you were interacting with yesterday?" Ms. Dreyfus asked. "Yes," Ellie said. "Livia Beckett, the daughter of Ms. Iris Beckett. And you knowingly broke protocol by remaining with her in a private classroom without supervision?" Ellie's voice didn't waver. "She walked in on her own. I didn't touch her. I only drew." Mark Riley leaned forward. "We appreciate your honesty, Ms. Wallace. But this is a highly sensitive matter. Ms. Beckett is a prominent figure, and her child is under unique care arrangements. We have strict guidelines for a reason." Ellie said nothing. The words hung like weights around her neck. "What were your intentions?" he asked suddenly. "My intentions," she echoed. "Yes. You stayed. You drew. You returned. Why?" Ellie looked out the window, where children chased shadows across the quad. Because she stayed too, and because she drew back. Ms. Dreyfus shifted uncomfortably. "You understand we have grounds for dismissal." "Of course." "But there's a complication," Riley interrupted. "Since your involvement, Ms. Beckett's daughter has shown more communicative behavior than she has in over a year. Her therapists have noticed it. Her teacher submitted a note this morning. She made eye contact. She handed in a drawing without prompting." Ellie blinked. That shouldn't have mattered. And yet somehow, it did. "Iris Beckett is not pleased," Ms. Dreyfus said quickly. "She wants this contained." Riley's eyes flicked to the principal. "She also wants answers." Ellie waited. For judgment, for dismissal, for shame to close in. But what she felt instead was defiance. "I won't apologize for seeing a child," she said quietly. "Not just walking past her, not just checking a box, seeing her." Riley tilted his head, intrigued. Because that's not what most people would say in your position. I've never been most people. That night, Ellie couldn't sleep. Her daughter's old drawings lined the walls of their apartment, taped and faded from years of weathering. There had been a time when she thought art would save them both. But life had a way of rerouting dreams through hardship. Her daughter's illness, the bills, the loss. Now it was just her. Just the memory. And her pencils, still sharp but unused. By morning, word had spread. A post written by a school journalist had gone viral. No names were given, but everyone in the building knew. A silent child spoke in pictures. A janitor listened. A system flinched. Within hours, reporters hovered near the gates. Parents whispered in drop-off lines. Staff debated protocol like it was a philosophy course. And Ellie walked the same halls, unapologetic, unbent. That afternoon, her name echoed again through the intercom. "Ms. Wallace, please report to conference room 2A. Iris Beckett stood inside, impeccable as ever. Her daughter beside her, arms folded, silent. Ellie didn't sit. "You've become a topic of conversation," Iris said, without preamble. "I didn't ask to." "No. You just inserted yourself where you don't belong." Ellie exhaled through her nose. "I belong wherever I'm allowed to care." Livia stepped forward. In her hands, a marker. She walked to the whiteboard in the room and began to draw. A tree, a small girl, a sun. Then a new image. A woman with curls and a broom. Iris froze. "She doesn't talk," she said, "but she remembers." Ellie stepped closer but didn't touch the marker. "She started this. I just listened." Something in Iris's face shifted, not softened, not yet, but cracked. A thin hairline fracture in the steel. "Do you know what it means to carry an empire?" Iris asked, quieter now. "To be seen only as power and not as a mother?" "Yes," Ellie replied, "but from the other side." There was a pause then. Real. Heavy. "I should fire you," Iris said. "You still might." "But I won't." Livia turned, smiling just barely, and placed the marker in Ellie's hand. That was how it began to change. Small, quiet, like most revolutions. By the end of the week, the post had reached national attention. Commentators debated the ethics of janitorial boundaries, yes, but also class, race, and who gets to be a voice for children. Ellie was offered interviews. She declined them all. "I'm not the story," she said. "The drawing is." Behind closed doors, Beckett Dynamics' PR team raged. "This makes us look weak," one aide said. "People will ask why the daughter of a tech billionaire only responds to a cleaning lady." Iris didn't blink, because the cleaning lady listened. Still, pressure mounted. Investors questioned stability. The school board requested meetings, but something in Iris refused to retreat. One night, she drove to the school alone. No chauffeur, no entourage. She walked past the portraits of donors and paused in the kindergarten wing. There, taped on the wall, was a drawing of 3 figures: a girl, a woman with a cart, and another woman with a sharp suit. At the bottom, in awkward handwriting, "This is us." Iris wiped her eyes quickly. At home, she gathered the awards off her mantle. She looked at them. Recognition for leadership, innovation, impact. None of them said mother. Then she opened her drawer and found the one thing that mattered now. Her daughter's first original sketch, drawn with Ellie. a girl holding a balloon shaped like a heart. The next morning, she called a meeting. The boardroom was tense. Men in expensive suits bristled. "I've decided to establish a new foundation," she announced. "The Livia Beckett Initiative, a program for recognizing overlooked talent in schools, particularly women in support roles. Ellie Wallace will serve as a consultant." "You can't be serious," someone muttered. "She's not a professional." "She's exactly what this space needs," Iris replied. "Someone who listens, someone who sees." Outside the room, Ellie continued her shift. Same uniform, same cart. But something in the way people looked at her had changed. Some still averted their eyes, but others nodded. One teacher even stopped her. "My daughter read about you," she whispered. "She said you're her hero." Ellie smiled, but said nothing. Heroes didn't look like her. Not usually. But maybe it was time that changed too. And upstairs, behind a frosted glass door, Iris Beckett stared out at the skyline. For the first time in years, her reflection looked human. Tired, complicated, real, and not alone. The new plaque outside room 103 didn't draw attention at first. It's a Wallace Art Lab. No gold trim, no ceremony. Just 4 words, black on brushed steel, quietly screwed into the wall where janitorial signs used to hang. Some of the teachers passed by without noticing. Others slowed for a second, then moved on. But for the 4th graders who watched Ellie tape up their drawings with steady hands and soft nods, it meant everything. She still wore the uniform, still pushed her cart, still swept the hallways in the early hours before anyone arrived. But now, once a day, she stopped to teach. Not with a lecture, but with colors, with lines, with silence. Ellie never referred to herself as a teacher. Others did. Parents, students, even Iris Beckett. But she didn't need the title. The children came because they wanted to. Livia came and sat closest to her, never speaking, but always watching, always drawing. Each day her sketches grew more detailed, each line bolder. One morning, she tugged Ellie's sleeve and handed her a picture. It was of Ellie, holding hands with a small girl. Below, written in a child's unsteady print, was a single word: Ellie. It was the first time Livia had ever written anyone's name. Word spread fast. And this time, the media didn't just whisper. They roared. Billionaire's mute daughter speaks first word to Janitor. Unseen talent, unheard voices. How one woman changed a school. The custodian who healed with a marker. Ellie refused every interview. "I'm not interested in attention," she said. "I'm interested in children being seen." But not everyone admired her stance. Beckett Dynamics board pushed back hard. "We're getting calls from donors," said one director. "Why are we platforming a janitor like she's some kind of expert?" "Because she is," Iris replied. "Expert in being ignored. Expert in connection. Expert in something none of you seem to value. Humanity." They threatened her position, warned her of PR risks. She answered by increasing the foundation's budget and launching a pilot initiative across 5 more schools. And she made Ellie a paid consultant. Ellie declined the offer. "I don't want a spotlight," she said. I want a door." "What kind of door?" Iris asked. "A door other people like me can walk through." So Iris changed the proposal. Ellie wasn't named a one-off success story. She was asked to help design a mentorship network. Janitorial, cafeteria, and support staff trained to work with kids in artistic and emotional development. No resumes required. Just patience, insight, presence. Ellie agreed, and for the first time in her adult life, she sat at a boardroom table. She wore her cleaning shoes, brought her thermos, said very little. But when she spoke, people listened. The students did too. They began a project called Voices We Missed. Middle schoolers with iPads interviewed the school staff, custodians, cafeteria workers, aides, and created short video profiles. In one clip, a soft-spoken security guard read poetry in Arabic. In another, the mail clerk demonstrated origami folding with precise, calloused fingers. Ellie helped edit each video. Never center frame. Always behind the scenes. It was enough. Livia's voice began as a whisper, then a sentence, a story, a joke. Her therapist called it an accelerated re-entry into expression. Ellie called it what it was, a child finally feeling safe. By spring, Crescent Academy hosted its first assembly where support staff sat on the front row. Ellie tried to decline, but Livia insisted by dragging her by the hand, grinning. Iris Beckett took the podium. 6 months ago, I walked into a classroom and saw something I didn't understand, she said. A janitor, a marker, and my daughter smiling. The room was silent. I thought it was a breach of protocol. I was wrong. It was a breakthrough of connection, and I want to publicly thank the woman who made it possible. She turned toward Ellie, who stood in the wings, half hidden behind a curtain. Ellie Wallace, she said, voice steady. You didn't just change my daughter's life. You reminded me what leadership really looks like. Applause erupted. Ellie stood still, then stepped forward. No speech, no gesture. Just a simple nod. Later that day, a letter arrived. It was from Cooper Union, the art school she'd once left behind when her mother fell ill and the bills drowned her dreams. The letter was hand-signed. Your old portfolio inspired a student who was accepted this year. We're reaching out to see if you'd be open to exhibiting your early work in our new community gallery. Ellie stared at the page. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she picked up her pencil. That evening, she walked Livia to the gate where Iris waited. Before she left, the girl whispered something so softly, it seemed like breath more than sound. Thank you. Ellie smiled. Keep drawing. Weeks later, a local news segment aired. Former janitor reimagines inclusion in elite private school. It showed the Wallace Art Lab, kids painting with cafeteria staff, students interviewing support workers. Ellie didn't watch it live. She was busy helping a shy boy draw his dreams on butcher paper. A spaceship, a dog, a family. The real story wasn't on TV. It was in the way the kids smiled at her now. How they sat closer, listened deeper. It was in the way teachers stopped, just for a second, and asked how she was doing. One morning, Ellie passed the new plaque again. A student had placed a tiny bundle of chalk beneath it. A quiet thank you. Then another bundle appeared, and another. A tradition had started. Unplanned, unofficial, unforgettable. At the end of the semester, Iris invited Ellie to dinner. Not a business meeting, just food, family, connection. Ellie came in her work shoes. No pretense. She sat at the table across from the woman who once dismissed her, and now watched her with the eyes of someone still learning, still growing. They ate, laughed, spoke about childhoods and mistakes and second chances, and somewhere between the meal and the soft music on the stereo, Ellie said something that stayed with Iris long after the night ended. I don't need to be the hero in the story, she said. I just want to be someone who didn't look away. Iris nodded. You never did. The next morning, Ellie walked out of Crescent Academy with her old lunchbox in hand. On its lid, drawn in careful pastel, was a picture of a girl with braids holding a son. She paused on the steps, breathed in, and kept walking, still unseen by some, but no longer invisible, and that was enough.